This notion of differential impact is this kind of notion that in a crisis you need certain things. Those 12 things will count more, and that that while they're good for everybody, we all need those 12 things, of course, but boy, when crisis strikes, they're that much more important. Imagine you are a counselor to these different people. You're counseling somebody without problems, or you're not going to have any impact because they don't need you. You're counseling somebody with a little bit of a problem, and let's face it, they're so much easier to work with anyways, right? You're going to get a little bit of a bump. But boy, you spend your time with the person who is most in crisis, the most ornery, the most curmudgeon-y, the most difficult to work with. If you can actually help them find some of those 12 things, the potential impact is going to be absolutely astronomical. There's a danger in this. Sometimes if you give people at lower levels of risk something, let me give you an example, like an opioid, a treatment for a painkiller. You give someone whose life isn't that chaotic, who's had a bit of an injury, and who basically needs an opioid for that particular small period of time, but everything else, they have good relationships, stable funding, they're not losing their house, everything. You give them a painkiller, then chances are they'll use it responsibly, they'll get better, and away we go. But imagine you give someone whose absolute life is in total chaos, hell, and you do that same intervention of a drug, it's very likely to lead to addictions and other problems. I'm getting all kinds of head nods, and you've seen this pattern. So this notion of resilience as one size fits all just doesn't hold up, because in some contexts people can actually get harmed. There are actually interventions where, well, people at lesser levels of stress might actually experience the intervention as problematic. Let me give you an example. Ever try to offer counseling to somebody who's actually not that messed up? And they go, oh my God, I must be really, really sick if you're in my life. There's a little bit of a, we pathologize the problem. My point is that if I come in there and I say, you're struggling a little bit, I really think you should go for therapy or counseling, and you go, I didn't really think I was coping that badly, you're actually likely to become more sick. Versus the person who really, really is struggling, you offer them counseling, they're going to improve because they really are in the depths of despair. Now, they may not accept your invitation for counseling the first time, or the 6th time, or the 10th time. But if you can get them to engage in that assertive kind of treatment way, say with an addictions problem, then they will do better. But if you offer something that people don't need, it can actually have harm. A while back, I was consulting on a case at a children's hospital where a young man, about 12 years old, 13 years old, he had one of those neurodevelopmental degenerative diseases. His body was slowly deteriorating, and what he had done over time, his treatment team were very upset because he was supposed to continue to be mobile. He had gotten to the point now where he needed to use the canes, right? Those awkward-looking canes. And this is his languaging of them. I don't know if they're awkward-looking or not, but he experienced them as very awkward. And his team insisted that he continue to kind of keep mobile, because I guess there's something about the interaction between him moving and slowing the progression of the disease or something like that. What the problem was that the boy was insisting that he be put in a wheelchair. And his treatment team was going all crazy. Well, no, we're not going to put you in a wheelchair. This is really good for your physical development. We don't agree with that. You've got to stay on the canes as long as you possibly can. And the boy was saying, look, could you just put me in a wheelchair, for gosh sakes? And this navigation negotiation wasn't working. They were really at odds with each other. And eventually we got involved, and I said, look, to the boy, I said, why do you want to be in a wheelchair? You'll lose physical mobility. He says, you don't get it, do you? I want to be in a wheelchair so I can be out with my friends. If I'm in these weird and awkward canes, that is his perception of them. He felt weird. He felt immobile by the canes. He couldn't move with his friends. So he's losing connections, but even worse, his identity. He'd seen Glee. He knew that wheelchairs were cool. He'd seen those vets come back and play murder ball. I mean, that's cool, right? In his world, if he was in a wheelchair, he'd be cool. He'd be mobile. He could be social. He had a certain cachet, a powerful identity. And the treatment team was only thinking about physical mobility and degeneration and all this kind of stuff. And he was thinking about all the other aspects that made him resilient. And in a sense, so then the negotiation was indeed to figure out other ways of giving him physio in another way, but to make sure that he in fact got his wheelchair, so that the quality of his overall life was better. This is this navigation, negotiation, whether it's about you on your job or the people that you work with. This is fundamentally what we need more to understand, that it's a complex pattern, and that what makes a difference in one context isn't necessarily going to count in another, and what makes what is going to count, it really does depend on the risk exposures.